So for this exercise, you're going to need a Sharpie marker, a pencil, kneaded eraser, a little scrap piece of watercolor paper, 2 grayscale charts. There's another video to show you how to make a grayscale chart in a PowerPoint file. And then punch holes in the center of each square. This will be your value finder, and then tape one of them down onto your watercolor chart. And I have a 1/4 sheet of hot press paper already taped down to the watercolor board, which is a piece of gator board, ahead of time. And I'm using 3M contractor grade masking tape, just a regular number 2 pencil. You're going to need your paint, a brush. So you're going to need your 6 required primary colors for this. And then we're going to make our chart, so we also need a ruler, probably at least 18 inches. So while I'm making the chart, I'm going to get my paint nice and soggy and wet. So I'm using a little eyedropper to wet my paints, the colors that I'm going to use. But this is a value study, so the first thing I want to do while my paint's getting soggy is I'm going to make my chart. So I've taped one of my value ranges down. It should have 1 is the highest value and 9 is the lowest value. So 9 is black, 1 is white. And now I'm just going to make a chart that lines up with my squares. Again, you'll want to watch that other video if you can't find a grayscale. And then you'll need a fairly decent printer that'll print sensitive grayscale. Or you can paint your grayscale if you're bold and energetic. So I'm just going to first create my horizontal. I'll probably only need 2 rows, but in this case we're going to do our tonal range and our value association at the same time. So then this is my 1 square. So I'm doing it in pencil first, just so I can erase it if I make mistakes. So what I want to do is come down from the top of this chart, use my inches. I want to come down 2 inches so I can get a nice value range. So I'm going to do 2 inches on either side with a tick mark, and then I'm going to line up my tick mark and give myself a horizontal line there. And then I want to do the 2 more inches in case I have 2 colors that are the same value association. So in this lesson you're going to learn how to associate color with value, both between colors and within a color. So we have basically a 1 inch by 2 inch rectangle for each color. Oh, actually I wanted to leave a place to label, so this is why I want to do it in pencil first. So I want to come down 1/2 inch first, just so I can label my color for future reference, and then come another 2 inches down, and then give myself another 1/2 inch for a label on my colors. So we're going to chart 6 colors. Make sure I get this right. So that's 1/2 inch. That's 2 inches. That looks right. This is a 1/2 inch. Oh, I only did 1/4 inch there. That's why I'm off. Good to do it in pencil to start. Okay, and then I want to come down another 1/2 inch for my label. Okay, erase all those tick marks. And give myself the other label square. Now I'm going to come back in and do my lines in Sharpie marker. Now that I know where my lines are going to be and I don't want to erase, I can do it in Sharpie marker because this is permanent ink and it won't get into my paint. In other words, it's not water soluble. Okay, one more line to the vertical. Do my horizontal lines. So this is the line for the label. So plan with pencil so you can make corrections. Keep your lines pretty light to start with. You shouldn't need more than 2 rows. You're only going to chart 6 colors. Maybe 7 if you want to. Okay, now I can erase those pencil lines off so they don't pollute my color tests. And then I like to take a thicker Sharpie marker, so a fine point instead of an extra fine point, and I want to make this line thick up here, and we're going to paint over this thick line for a later test of transparency, and so we don't have to do it again later on. Okay, save you some time for a later lesson if you do that. Okay, actually I want to do another line across there just so I can see a little white above that line. I'll do the same thing here. This is a thicker line. This will start my second row just in case I have 2 colors of the same value. It'll all make sense in a minute. So you're going to paint over the top of these black lines. So I like to use a little bit thicker marker for that. Okay, so that's the chart, creating the chart that you're going to now paint on. Then you want to get your 6 colors, put all the pencils and the rulers and everything away so you're not tripping over it while you're painting. I like to have a little bit of paper towel as well in my hand so I can dab up cloth. I'm going to put my chart to the side for a minute and get my brush out. I don't know why I have a brand new brush. I'm not going to use that one. I'm going to use an older brush. And now I want to use this test paper to get my paint as thick as possible, so hopefully it's nice and juicy since I got it wet while I was painting. And I'm just going to do a little, as thick as I can get it, test on a separate piece of paper of my 6 colors. So that was the Pyrrole Red, This is the Quin Rose. So you don't want very little water in your paint when you do this, because you want to know how strong, what value it is at its strongest strength. I have a little bit too much water, so I'm adding pigment to that. So those are my two reds. And this is my blue. You're going to be tempted to skip this step. I really recommend you don't, because you'll get your value associations wrong. So get this as thick as you can get it. That's my first blue, and this is my phthalo blue. As thick as you can possibly make it. Hardly any water, just enough to make it move. Clean your brush in between, and then find a clean spot for your yellows as well. Really clean your brush. In fact, it's probably best to start with yellow so that your brush is as clean as it's going to be. And get that yellow as thick as possible. Clean your brush really well in between. If you do a little figure eight, it's supposed to clean it out better. And then get the second yellow. So those are the 6 required colors that you're going to have to chart. And you can't chart them until they're dry, because they're going to change value as they dry. So that's why we're doing it on the test. I'm also going to do this manganese blue just because I want to chart this blue as well. I want to know how strong this blue is. Okay, so I'm going to let those dry before I try to put it on my chart, because I don't know what the value is when it's wet, because it's going to change. So I'm going to turn the video off and come back when it's dry. Okay, so now that we're have our swatches dry, now we can do our value test with our value finder. So the way you want to do this is you're going to do one color at a time, and you're going to squint your eyes down as much as possible, and then I'm going to do this red one first. Okay, so as I squint, can I see the circle at that value? And yes, I can still see the circle. And now I'm going to squint down and move it to the next dot, and I can still see the circle. It feels lighter than that color. So I'm still squinting. I'm looking at this red. It's getting closer, but I can still see the circle. I have to really squint. Ooh, now the circle kind of disappears right about there. So I'm squinting. So that's a 6. Let's go one more. Now the circle appears darker. Actually, it disappears there too. So it's a little lighter there. So I'm going to say that red is a 5, because that's where my circle is most disappeared. Now it's darker, definitely. So it's not a 4. It's pretty close to a 6, but I can still see the circle. It feels lighter. When I squint, that's where my circle disappears the most for me. So now I'm going to take that red, do one color at a time, and here's where I also suggest you get some way to make an angle. You don't have to get anything fancy like this. This is an easel. Sorry, zoom out. This is a easel, tabletop easel that I have. So now you want to have your paper at a flat board at a slant. You can do something like, just a can and put it underneath. It's not as stable, but it'll work. But you want to have an angle on your board in some way. You can use a thick roll of tape, something to put under your board so that you create a nice angle. All right, don't lose track of that, because we're going to use that for the test. So that was my red. That was my warm red, or the one that appears a little more orangey, and I said it was a 5. So now I'm going to get my paint as thick as I can get it to start, and I'm going to paint over in the value range that I decided it was, and I'm going to paint with one swatch over that black line. And so that paint should flow down. So now I'm going to take a little bit of water. I'm going to add it to that paint. So now I'm adjusting the value a little bit. I'm going to fill up this whole rectangle, and I'm going to do what's called a graded wash. So I'm going to add, so that was a little bit weaker. I'm going to add another brush load of paint, and I'm going to pull that bead down the page. Add a little bit more water, swish it all around. You don't need very much for this small triangle. We're just going to keep adding water between every stroke so that the paint gets thinner as we go down the page. So it's critical to have an angle so that that water will flow down. Use gravity to our benefit. Add another thing of water, and now I'll finish it off. I'm going to just clean it up a little bit and finish off that rectangle. Now I'm going to get all the water out of my brush, and I'm going to collect that bead of water that's forming. Every time I come off the page, I want to wipe off the excess water. So this is going to be a tonal range of color. You want it as thick as possible, closer to the value range that it is. So that's one color done. Then you're going to get your pencil and you're going to label it. Color name or hue. So this is Pyrrole Red and brand. And mine is Daniel Smith. You might have a different brand. You might have Pyrrole Scarlet. But the goal is to get a dark color, a medium color, and a light color in this of one color. So that makes that a tonal range. Okay, now I'm going to test the next one. So I'm going to get my value finder again and my swatches. Now I'm going to test the other red. So once again, I'm going to squint. I can see it. The circle feels lighter. 5. I'm going to say this one. If I really squint, I'm going to say this one's a 6. That's when the circle disappears for me. So this color is now my quinacridone rose. So I want to get it as thick as possible to start with. So I'm going to leave a little bit of white in between this and my other red so it doesn't mess up my tonal range. I'm going to paint right over that swatch or that black line. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add water, one brush load of water just to thin it down. I'm going to catch the bottom of that bead and I'm going to pull that paint down. Got a little too weak right away. I don't want that quick of an adjustment. Okay, add another brush load of water. Pull that down. Remember to leave a white edge. Got some sort of resist on here. I don't know what it is. So I'm using hot press paper. You can use cold press if you want to. I'm not sure what that resist is there. Add water after every pass of the brush. And finally get it down to a really thin state at the end. Now clean off your brush on your towel. Get rid of all the excess water. And then collect that bead at the end. So we have a dark color a medium color, and a light tone. I'm actually going to lift a little bit of that off so I can see what it is in its light state. And then before I forget, I'm going to write the color name or hue. I can abbreviate. And this is also Daniel Smith brand. Okay, now we're going to do the next test. So now we'll go to this blue. And so it's not black. I can still see the line, or still see the circle. Zoom in. You probably can't see this too well on camera. Let me zoom in on this. Okay, so when I put that over there, I can still see the circle. I can still see the circle pretty well. Starting to disappear. Now I can really see it. It's darker than the circle. So I'm going to say this one's a 7. I can write it on there if I want, and I'll do my next test as well. So this is ultramarine blue. This is phthalo blue. I think that's the same. So this is a 7 as well. And now we'll do this lighter blue. I can really see it there. I can really see it there. I can really see it there. Starting to disappear. Oh. I'm gonna give that one a 5 as well. So that's a 5. And we'll do the yellows. So if I know it's a higher value, so I can really see it there. I can still see it. And I'm gonna give that one a 2. And let's start at 2, and that one's darker. If I squint, yeah, it's a 3. That's my paints. You might have a different complement of paints. So we said this was a 6, and this is a 5. And my 2 blues are 7s. So I'm going to go ahead and clean my water. So that's my value associations using my value finder. Okay, so now I'm going to do my ultramarine blue, which is this more of a purpley blue, and I said that was a 7, so I'm going to put it there. As thick as I can get it over the black line. It's going to be a later test. You're going to be really glad you did it. Now I'm going to get some water, 1 brush load, thin it down, pull that down. This is going to be the method for doing a graded wash as well. 1 brush load, add more water, pull it down. So your goal is to get at least 3 distinct values in this little rectangular box. I'm going to weaken it even more, and then I'm going to pull that water down. Weaken it even more, pull it down to the end. So that's how to do a graded wash, which means varying values. This is a tonal range of color. So we have a dark, medium tone, and light tone. Go ahead and label that before I forget. This is ultramarine light, and this is a different brand, Holbein for me. Put that in quickly before I forget. I'm going to go ahead and do another pass over that black line because I didn't quite get it dark enough over the top. That. Okay, so now I have duplicate value. So I have 2 7s. So I'm going to come down here and to this row and chart my phthalo. Phthalo it's just slightly darker. I could almost chart this as a 6 as well, but it's closer to a 7. the ultramarine is. Okay, so now I need to clean out my mixing area because I don't want to get any of that ultramarine blue into my phthalo blue, because that'll make it so it's not an accurate test. Okay, so this is my ultramarine, my phthalo blue. So I want to get it as thick as I can to start with. So hardly any water. And it's a 7, so I need to be in the 7 value range. Paint right over that black line as thick as I can get it. I'm gonna do it again. Okay, now I'm gonna weaken my pigment with 1 brush load, and I'm gonna pull that paint down the page. Weaken it again. Pull that brush load down the page. Weaken it again, pull that bead down the page. Weaken it again, pull it down the page. And phthalo blue is a beautiful color. You don't really see it until it's pulled out and added water. It's one of the few colors that actually looks more vibrant with more water in it than when it's dark. Okay, so I want to be careful to have at least 3 values. I have a dark, a medium, and a light in my tonal range of color. So this is phthalo blue. It's actually phthalo cyanide blue, but everybody just calls it phthalo. And this is a Daniel Smith color in my palette. You could have different brands. Make sure you work with only professional brand paint. And I'm doing this on hot press paper so I can do a granulation test later on too. Okay, so now we have to do our 2 yellows, which are down in this part of the range, a 2 and a 3. So I want to make sure I get my brush really clean and my mixing area really clean. I'll go ahead and clean this one off too, because I'm going to need 2 clean mixing areas for yellow. It's especially important for yellow to have a clean mixing area because it gets swayed to another color really easily. So I'll get that nice and clean. Make sure my brush is nice and clean. So that's my dirty water. Okay, so I'll start with this lighter, greener yellow. Get it as thick as I can. I'm going to paint over the black line on a 2. Don't quite get that without any water. I'm going to repeat that so it's nice and strong over the black line. Now add a brush load of water and pull that bead down the page to create a graded wash. 1 brush load more of water at a time. And make sure you mix it up all the way so you don't get different strengths of paint in the middle of the wash. Okay, and then go ahead and finish that off. As you can see, the yellow is quite a bit lighter. Clean your brush, wipe off the excess, and now we have a graded wash for yellow. And then my darker yellow is this color. I'll come out here, get it as thick as I possibly can on the 3, so it's in the 3 range, leaving a little white edge so it doesn't flow into that other rectangle. Make sure that's as thick as possible over the black line. I'm going to start to dilute it. 1 brush load. And this is also how to do a graded wash. So this satisfies a couple of demos for you. Mix up the paint thoroughly so you don't get different strengths of pigment in one brush load. And then clean off your brush, collect the excess. Oop, I forgot to label this. So for my palette, this is Hansa Yellow Light. And it's by Daniel Smith. So you need a pretty big area to put in your label. And then this is New Gamboge, also by Daniel Smith. So those are the 6 colors you're required to chart. I'm also going to chart my manganese blue, which I decided is a 5. I actually think it's a 4. I'm going to do my test again. Put it on 4. I think I'm going to chart it as a 4. It's just not that dark. I'm going to clean out my mixing area so I don't get red and yellow in there. Yeah, it's kind of in between a 4 and a 5, so I'm going to chart it as a 4. You could go either way. So I want to get it as strong as possible. Hardly any water. Get all the excess off my brush. Okay, get that out of the way, and then I'm going to put that as a 4. So as thick as possible at the beginning over the black line. Now I'm going to water it down, pull the bead down, leave a little white area so it doesn't pollute my yellow test, which I might not have done very well. So on hot press paper, you don't get as smooth of a gradient wash as you might with the cold press paper, because of the surface is just a little more slick. Okay, so for me that's my chart. I just want to know the value association of my light blue, and later on it'll be an important way to tell about granulation. So now this is called Manganese Blue Hue by also Daniel Smith. So most of my colors are Daniel Smith. I sell Daniel Smith paint out of my studio, so that's what most of my colors are, but I prefer the Holbein ultramarine blue, which is probably the color I use most often. And the reason I'm using hot press paper is I think you can do the evaluation of granulation easier on hot press paper. So that is the value test. So we're testing value between colors. So this red isn't as dark as that red when it's the strongest. This blue and the 2 blues are about the same strength. None of our colors are really 1s or 9s unless we have white. You're welcome to chart the white if you want. It'll be an important test later, but we're not going to probably use any black pigment throughout the course. And some of the purples might come in the 8s, but usually the blues and the greens and the reds will be 5, 6, 7 range pigments. Okay, that's the end of that exercise video. Good luck. It's a really important thing to understand about pigment is the value association and how to create a tonal wash of color.